Welcome everybody. This is Zack Parnell with ITI. Welcome to the webinar. As people start joining in, we'll get started here. This is a unique webinar. We do this once a month. It's called the Showcase Webinar Series. If you haven't been before, welcome. What's neat about this webinar is we're actually going to compile. We made quite a list, and I'm sure there's some stopwatches out there already, but we made a pretty big list of crane and rigging resources that we think you all should be aware of. And this probably, I wanted to go over quickly where this came from. We have a big resources section on our website that we've built out for people to access, whether it's ASME interpretations, info kits, the webinar series, and different resources we've created. After this webinar, the whole effort here was to actually expound and build this resources section out a lot, and I think you'll all enjoy what you find in the resources. And actually at the end of this, we're going to ask you to help us by letting us know about any other resources you're aware of that the industry should be aware of. So I've got a stopwatch going, and I'm going to have to breeze through this. We've promised 25 minutes, and we don't want to get charged for false advertising. So basically, ITI is a world leader in crane and rigging training. We love what we do. We are a content killer, as I like to say, and like similar to a category killer. When it comes to retailer shops like Toys R Us, we really specialize in crane and rigging content, and that's all we do. So we service some of the world's largest organizations in that space, and we cover everything from offshore construction to maritime and oil and gas and nuclear power gen, everything. There's lifting going on worldwide, as we know. And what's neat is you're going to learn about some of these resources, but if you're not familiar with us, just check out iti.com/training. You'll be able to go over some of the courses that we offer. And then we offer those courses through instructor-led training as well as online on demand. We have a lot of references and resources in our bookstore. We do consulting work, webinars, etc. So I'm Zack Parnell. I told Jonah he usually does an introduction for Mike Parnell, my father, who's our technical director. I said I'm not worthy of an introduction. I'm happy to describe myself a bit. I'm a big fan of content and instructional design, and that's kind of a lot of what we're going to do today is go over core industry knowledge that's self-paced. So this is the methodology, and there's a massive disclaimer after this, but the methodology was to show you everything that we can find in the industry, live into a list of 50 that are great self-paced learning references or resources. We were looking for really unique or differentiating attributes, and again, the idea was to make sure everybody knew what was out there. The big disclaimer I told you about, this is not a comprehensive list. It's limited to 50, obviously. We did not utilize a scientific method when we sourced this list. It's we didn't hire or have a PhD go after the list and make sure there was a really good approach to how we solved it. We looked for a lot of different. You'll see books, you'll see YouTube channels, you'll see websites, etc. But I just want to disclaim that yes, we did not spend 1,000 hours building out this list. And obviously there's probably some personal bias in here from me because I built the list, and I want to encourage you that it'll be awesome, and I'm excited to get into it. So let's get started. I've got 25 minutes. I've already spent 4 of it. The first website I wanted to share with you is vertical.net. If you haven't been there, it's pretty awesome. It's really good on industry news, and I think it's based out of Germany or Holland, but it's essentially probably the leading crane, up-to-date crane news and lifting news across all industries. And by the way, you'll notice that if you did the math, I've got under 30 seconds to do every slide here, so this will be very, very fast-paced. The second resource is actually Manitowoc's website. I wanted to share this because it's pretty impressive what they've done. They have quite a few calculators on their website, and ground bearing pressure calculator, CraneMax, Crane Manager software. They have quite a bit of, they actually reference 3D Lift Plan, another feature on our list, but the resources section on the website is pretty robust. Additionally, another manufacturer, Crosby Group, has a really robust website. We mainly wanted to highlight their catalog. It's a very interactive catalog. It's called the 2014 General Catalog, but they have every section of their catalog built out, and it's really user-friendly. So there's hundreds of products, and Crosby is still market leader by far for shackle manufacturing and other rigging hardware. Columbus McKinnon, another great manufacturer, leader in chain hoists and chain, etc. They have a pretty neat, what they call it, they just call it their library here, as you can find it on their website. And they have a ton of product manuals, and what I really liked about it was they have all CAD drawings. So if you want to be able to go import any of their equipment into a CAD software or a lift planning software, they have it all in there. They have a ton of media and parts breakdown, which is really interesting and good to have. Our first SCNRA member, I'm going to point out a few SCNRA members and the association. Some of these companies do incredible work. Barnhardt Crane and Rigging, they are a world leader in the heavy lift engineering space. They have over 70 engineers in the U.S. that handle a lot of really complex problems in the nuclear industry and power gen in general. So they have a ton of video presentations as well as a video library on their website, and I wanted to show you briefly what that looked like. The video library has very well laid out, and they have really neat animations in here, for instance, how their tip stick works. So it's a very, very neat resource if you want to see pretty high-end engineered lifting systems at work. Here's a video going of the tip stick in action. It's going to actually lift up this object and be able to rotate it on its side with a single hook. Okay, so you can see how deep the video library goes. As well, they have, like I mentioned, the crane rigging resources section, which is more downloads available in PowerPoints and whatnot. So the next one on our list is Maxim Crane, another probably the largest crane rental outfit in the United States. Maxim Crane has a massive load chart section on their website, so this is a very helpful tool if you ever need to find a load chart for any specific crane. They have it built out pretty incredibly here with all the all-terrain units, DMAG, Grove, etc., everything in their fleet, Liebherr. I mean, this is just, you can see I'm scrolling and scrolling for days. They must have over 100 crane makes and models on here. So that was a really neat tool that we found. Our instructor team has found very helpful when needing to pull up a specific chart of some sort. The next one, Sampson Rope. You see how the diversity in here. We got a ton of different stuff, but Sampson Rope is a manufacturer of, I think it's ultra high, well, it's HMPE rope. Okay, that's high M. I couldn't tell you exactly. I'm gonna have to go read the guide. Performance. Polyurethane, I'm sorry. It's a type of chemical, and please somebody type in the comments what HMPE stands for. It's not on the top of my head, but they've got an incredible inspection and retirement pocket guide for this rope. So this is a really shrunken down version. They actually have a card for this, and it's very, very, very well done. So on the Sampson Rope website, they go into this pretty new space of high performance rope that are used. I think they actually partnered recently with Manitowoc to put a hoist rope, but they use this and sell this offshore applications quite a bit and whatnot. But it's a very, very good website with a lot of resources, articles, case studies. They have to educate the marketplace pretty extensively in this space. So Tiedown is the next one. I jumped to their website already, but what we wanted to feature was their telematics section, foundation loading, and other reaction force calculators and resources on their website, a lot like Manitowoc's. So they have a pretty neat layout in here, but all the product resources are in there. It's nice to have your manufacturer resources at your fingertips. Another massive website, we're in the websites category, if you haven't noticed, is the CCO website. And CCO is the National Commission for the Certification of Crane Operators. For any organization that wants to build out, for instance, knowledge domains or in their crane rigging manual or anything like that for mobile crane operators, signal persons, lift director, riggers, CCO has it all available on their website, what the person should know. And obviously this is the crane operator section. So they show you obviously what's on the test. They have candidate handbooks. Everything is on here for people to prep and understand what they need to go learn to prepare for the exams. But incredible knowledge bank here. And CCOs, they just hit their 20th anniversary, I believe, last year. And anyways, there's been hundreds of contributors, SMEs over the years that have contributed to the information found on this website. So great job there. Another website everyone probably on the line already knows about is the OSHA website. We want to throw this in there that any safety or health officer or even training manager should have the 1926 code basically bookmarked in their browser. You can go access it right on the OSHA website and be able to scroll and search any feature of the 1926 if you don't know it already. Another big area or resource that we felt important was just LinkedIn in general. I actually should have just put a massive LinkedIn logo right here, but basically there are over 20 to 30 groups I think I'm personally a part of in LinkedIn that have over, you just look at the membership levels here, 21,000, 17,000, 20,000, 9,000. There's a lot of people out there that you can garner information and share information from about crane and rigging activities. And we'll get into some of these other groups specifically later, but all you really got to do is go search cranes and rigging in the LinkedIn search bar, and you'll find all the groups. Next two sites are interesting, and if you don't know about them, you probably do if you've bought or sold heavy equipment. But IronPlanet is they probably transact more crane sales around North America than any other auction house, and I wanted to showcase them a bit if you haven't learned about them. And then obviously Ritchie Brothers is probably the world leader in auctioning, but they've grown their inventory quite substantially for lifting equipment, as well as obviously they've always done construction and mining and heavy equipment, but they've got a pretty good crane section on there now too. So let's get into a few associations. We felt that it was important not just to focus on books or websites or LinkedIn groups. A LinkedIn group is a microcosm of what an association is, right? So the SCRA, if you don't know about them, it's the Specialized Carriers and Rigging Association. They have over 1,300 member companies. This is organizations that are members worldwide. And it's basically all of the crane and rigging contractors and heavy specialized transportation contractors. So you can go to their website, you can look at their membership. Quick story, Vestas is a customer of ours, and we've done a lot of work for them over the years. They have to utilize, they basically source crane and rigging and transport providers around the world, and we had customers up from Guatemala that were a part of SCRA, and we connected them. But the Vestas folks had mentioned, this is as a crane and rigging and transport vendor for Vestas moving tower sections and nacelles and blades across Latin America. I mean, being a part of SCRA was a big factor for them, and also just an important thing that the vendors have good access to advocacy groups, training, and other members to understand best practices and whatnot. They have an incredible rigging jobs of the year and transport jobs of the year every year at the annual events, which is great to follow. ACRP is another great association that I'd encourage anybody that considers themselves a crane and rigging professional to be a part of. So this is for people that are either doing education, as well as if you're a rigging engineer, or if you're a crane operator, or even a rigging or crane superintendent if you're handling operations, and then a safety person that's working strictly in cranes and rigging for the most part. This is an educational association. ITI sends all of our instructors to this association every year, their annual event in May, to get trained. So it's a professional development conference for us. And this year, for instance, we're going to be in Chattanooga, and we'll be touring TVA's Raccoon Mountain plant, as well as the Columbus McKinnon forging plant. Bechtel is presenting, Link-Belt is presenting. So it's a great professional development for people that are really deep into crane and rigging work every day. Another association is Wharf, if you haven't heard of them, or if you source wire rope, slings, crane rope, rigging of any sort. The Wharf membership probably represents, I would assume, 95% of that industry. So these are all of your, first of all the manufacturers like Crosby and CM are members, as well as the distributors. So the distributors, the wire rope fabricators that sell crane rope, that sell rigging, are all members. So it's a great home to learn about that industry. If you buy slings and rigging, like I said, your vendors are probably a member. So if you ever want to attend one of their meetings or go check out their website, it's a great resource for understanding best practices in sling and rigging manufacturing, as well as distribution. That was on the rigging side. CMAA is really on the crane, overhead crane side especially. It's the Crane Manufacturers Association of America. They've recently done something with MHI, Material Handling Industry, in some sort of a merger. It started way back in 1927, but the effort was to promote the standardization of building overhead cranes. So anyhow, this is, again, the overhead crane manufacturers group, in a sense, while AWRF was the rigging manufacturers group. And AEM is the heavy equipment manufacturers group, so the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. These are your Tiedanos and link belts and Manitowocks that we talked about before, as well as the Caterpillars and other heavy equipment manufacturers around the world. So great websites or associations to be a part of if you do buy and sell a lot of equipment. So the last association I think on our list is the Web Sling and Tiedown Association. If you're in the rigging realm, or if you're buying rigging, this association has done a lot of neat work around technical research and thought leadership. They've actually, one of our resources is a book they published on UV degradation for web slings. So they've actually built some of their own standards. They have a pretty good sized membership. I would assume most of their membership comes from AWRF members. But again, these are folks that specialize in making web slings and tie downs. Let's move into pure magazines and media, etc. If you're not on some of these magazine lists, you should. There's a lot of good information. American Cranes and Transport and International Cranes are both products of KHL Group, they have a massive website. Let's see if I can go find it here shortly. But they probably distribute. Let's jump over here. Here it is. They're probably the largest, I would say, magazine group when it comes to the construction and crane and rigging. KHL in general has over 13 magazines, I believe, 14, 15 if you look down here throughout the whole world. And they really do well in the crane and rigging space with technical articles, interviews. They're actually the SCNRA, I don't know what the exact term is, but they're the publisher of choice essentially for SCNRA. They do a really cool top 100 list for instance, top 100 crane companies, top 100 transport companies, etc. So it's a great magazine to be receiving every month. And it is free. I believe it's advertiser paid. So if you just want to go on their website and get access to it, you can. So they also have all sorts of other stuff like e-newsletters, etc. And Crane Hotline is another great magazine for the crane rigging space. They actually, I think, started in the crane sales space, total source for buyers, sellers, and owners and operators, but they've grown significantly over the past 5-10 years into technical writing. They still have a large distribution section on their magazine for dealers, equipment, as well as services, but another great magazine that's monthly and free. Wire Rope Exchange, this is an interesting magazine. They've really come a long way. I enjoy reading a lot of their articles about specific crane and wire rope applications. They covered Big Bertha up in Seattle when Barnhardt installed the cutter head, and just really cool technical articles and interviews about wire rope. It essentially started as an overstock catalog for wire rope, which I think they still do. But I would check them out there if you're again into buying and using wire rope and rigging. It's a great reference. A unique magazine that I enjoy looking at is the Heavy Lift and Project Forwarding. This is really probably the most dedicated magazine to over-dimensional heavy cargo logistics. So the companies that handle, like Mammut or Barnhardt or Roll Lift, that bring product from a manufacturing plant in Germany to a nuclear power plant in Tennessee, it's how those units make it from point A to point B, and they talk about the supply chain quite a bit. A lot of obviously ports and terminal discussions and macroeconomics, which is great. Okay, we're getting into books now. There's a lot of resources we're going to jump through really quick. This is an awesome book. Jim Weethorn, he's actually an instructor in our rigging engineering program on this subject. So he is the world leader, I would say, in the crane accident space. Hague Engineering is retained just about on any crane accident that happens in the U.S. And this book Jim came out with, I think in 2013, covers some pretty deep statistics on the past 20 years of crane accidents, the causes and trends, etc. And again, it's the most complete analysis we've ever seen on crane accidents. I think Jim actually had partnered up with he recruited gentleman out of MIT who helped actually structure the data and the statistics side of it, as Jim was the author and subject matter expert. So it was a great product, and something we'd recommend. Another awesome book that if you haven't heard about it, it came out about 2 years ago by Keith Anderson. He was recently named a top 25 newsmaker by ENR, Engineering News Record. Keith is currently the chief rigging engineer for Bechtel, the largest construction company in the world. This book he wrote is really just nails it on rigging engineering. He's a pretty passionate guy about building up the rigging engineering profession. There's a lot of folks out there that are doing this sort of work, but Keith wrote this book in an effort to kind of begin to formalize training for it, and it's just an incredibly well done book. Another awesome book, similarly like the rigging engineering, is The Art of Heavy Transport by Marco van Dal. We also put his field reference card on here, but this is talking about formalizing the skill of rigging engineer. This is formalizing the art of I'd call it heavy transport engineering, which Marco has done for over 25 years with companies like Mammoet and Fajoli and others. So great book here. And a quick check on my time. I'm at 22 minutes, but I think I got like 3 minutes of buffer time with my introduction. An awesome new book that just came out. The SCRA published this Guide to Mobile Crane Safety Management, and it's with Ron Koerner and Robert Hauntz. Basically, this is the extension or the rebirth of the Exxon Crane Guide, but it's wholly rewritten. This idea actually degrades the value of this book. Ron and Robert rewrote the entire thing, and we actually have a quote from Ron describing the need. There was really a need in the industry for a guide for crane superintendents and folks managing cranes, in a sense, and that's what really this is about. The Mobile Crane Support Handbook is an incredibly well-needed book. Dave Dewar wrote this to kind of formalize information on crane foundation loading. So you can tell here, Dave is a world leader in crane loading and rigging engineering. He's out of Houston, and this book retails for 39 bucks. I told Dave he should charge about 4 times as much for that book. It's a great book. This most comprehensive analysis on foundation loading, as I mentioned, and Dave will show up later in our list here shortly. The IPT book, if you haven't heard of this, it'd be rare. This is a great book that actually, I know, for instance, in the NCCCO rigger certification stuff, this book was about the sole technical resource. So Ron Garby, this has been a publication for decades now, but it's been well maintained and well updated. And anyhow, it's a great, actually, this is an error. It's not free. This is a paid book. This is not an advertiser paid book. So it's available on many bookstores and a great resource. There's actually 2 different types. There's a handbook and there's a training manual. So great stuff from Ron Darby. Another awesome rigging handbook, and these are really the 2 that we found that we really wanted to publicize. The Rigging Handbook by Jerry Klinke and his pocket guide. This, along with Garby's book, are probably 2 of the most well-done rigging handbooks available. So, again, if you haven't seen this book or IPT's book, you probably are pretty new to the industry, and that's okay. So, Cranes and Derricks, this is a really big effort. I mean, this book is awesome. It was originally written by Howard Shapiro and has now been carried on by Larry and Jay Shapiro, Howard's sons, as they manage and run. I think it's Howard Shapiro and Associates out of New York, but Howard is one of those, as I've been described to me, one of the godfathers of our industry, and so there's a ton of crane and rigging engineering, even derrick setup and installation, foundation loading is talked about, and this is a key resource that we've identified for our crane and rigging engineering course that Larry actually teaches. So awesome book there. And then I wanted to have one slide dedicated to the B30 series. So this is the ASME B30 series. I know there's over 25 codes or standards, they call them, in this volume. So this is actually a volume. These are industry standards, and they go into such topics like the B30.5 is the mobile crane standards. So this is where this has been invested in by over dozens, if not hundreds, of volunteer subject matter experts over the years. It's ANSI accredited ASME publication, essentially, on how to properly use, maintain, and every piece of equipment in the crane and rigging industry. The other thing, you probably have heard of B30. One thing you might not have heard about is the ASME standards lexicon. This is available, I think it's available on download. You might have to purchase or log into ASME to get this, but I did a Google search, and I might need to alert ASME about this, but a Google search, I got this Word document on a Google search. So it was over 100 pages. I think there's 1,500 terms, technical terms in there that ASME uses across the B30 standard. It might even be across, yeah, look at this. It actually is across the entire, all volumes. So here's B30, that term, D to D ratio is used in B30.9, but some of these terms are used in other standards. So an incredible dictionary, essentially, for the all the ASME volumes. The last ASME publication we want to touch on is the P30.1. This is a brand new standard. It's really for planning and lift planning for load handling activities. So again, it's very similar to the B30 series, but that group decided to make a standalone P30 volume to manage this content. This goes over the discussion of standard lifts versus critical lifts and what differentiates the two and what you should do to handle or process both types of lifting activities. Another new standard that I'm not sure if we didn't know about until a few months ago is the Z490. And this is an ANSI standard for actually developing and accepted practices in basically safety training. So for instance, ITI will reference this standard, and if there's any best practices in here that we feel we need to implement in our courses, this is a great standard to go by. So anyhow, it's a best practices on instructional design as well as delivery of training. Okay, another ANSI standard that was pointed out to me by a good friend yesterday. Of course, I had to go around to everybody and ask, what else should I have in my list? There's a nice standard here from ANSI on rigging qualifications and responsibilities, pretty similar to what can be found in ASME B30.5, as well as, well, even the CCO website goes over basically what a rigger 1 should know and a rigger 2 should know. But this standard is pretty comprehensive as well on rigging qualifications if you need to build a manual or designate roles in your organization. This is the Web Sling and Tiedown Association document I mentioned before. It's a really comprehensive guide on, and it's really a graphical display of UV testing and the outcomes. So what happens when web slings are subject to a lot of UV degradation? What happens to the synthetic fiber? So the WSTDA doing a great job by leading the industry, offering up that knowledge proactively, right? Great work there. This is a funny one that we decided to throw in here. If you have never seen this, I don't blame you. It's not probably out there a ton. It is a $2 steel magnet, but we found it incredibly useful in training, as well as we sell a lot of these actually out of our bookstore. But what happens is you might buy 100 of these, and for different oddball loads, you obviously stick it onto the load where the center of gravity is on 2 dimensions. So you might have some sort of a box here, and you throw one here where the center of gravity is there, and hopefully it is in line, obviously, this way with where the center of gravity is on the other plane, in a sense. So yeah, it's a great great little tool that we thought we'd throw in. Another set of visuals, along with the magnet here, there's a ton of posters available in the industry. So WSTDA has some, ITI has some, there's plenty of posters out there. We really, unfortunately, human beings aren't robots, as we all know. We don't remember things very well all the time, so having these visual displays in front of us is really helpful. There's a sling protection reminder type poster, there's a positive connections poster, mobile crane hand signals, rigging gear inspection, removal criteria, same with this one. I mean, there's a lot of different skill sets or knowledge that can be put on a poster in a shop or a facility of some sort that's helpful. Additionally, taking the information from a poster or a wall, there's reference cards. So there's a ton of these in the industry. Crosby has one, ITI has a bunch of them, different people have a bunch of them. We've sold over 3 million of our reference cards, and people have these in their hip pockets all the time. But this is a great way for people to take knowledge into the field and be able to quick cheat sheet for whether it's rigging inspection, removal criteria, or if a rigging engineer needs to remember different calculations or formulas. That's all on here. There's cards for everything, so it's a really helpful thing and practical way to keep information in your hip pocket. And obviously, this is slowly but surely being complemented by mobile applications. So another feature or unique product we wanted to touch on is the In a Flash rigging inspection program. There's a ton of people using rigging in all organizations across the world. We felt like there's a need for distributing a resource that people could quickly learn, at least get a quick information on how to inspect and discard rigging. There's a lot of bad rigging being used, and that's what causes most incidents if stuff is not caught before being used. Obviously, for instance, any dog legs or UV degradation or stuff that is visible, or corrosion, etc. But if people aren't trained about it, they don't realize how weak that can actually make the materials in the product, and then how weak and something will snap and break and so on. So an e-newsletter. This is the only email I think we had put in the list here, but the World Crane Week e-newsletters are really neat. Update every week from KHL, actually, that American Cranes and Transport publisher we felt was important to add. I think I'm running out of time, Jonah's saying. Another great website we want to throw in here was the Heavy Lift Specialist. This is Richard Krabendam's website. Richard is from the Netherlands. He has got more content on this website than most people will create in a lifetime. He actually sells his slides on here. He does a 2-day masterclass worldwide, but a lot of it is he's just got a ton of content that you can download in PowerPoints and whatnot. So another great website there. Dyka, this is another category killer we wanted to highlight. That if you ever, for outrigger pads for cranes and whatnot, they have an incredible fit system to figure out what size outrigger pad you need, as well as a ton of information on their website regarding outrigger pad resources and just knowledge information. They actually utilize a lot of information from Shapiro and Dewar on those crane foundation loading subjects, but they've really nailed it with a lot of good information on outrigger pads. 3D Lift Plan. This is one of the few softwares we have in here, and it's basically in our perspective, it's probably the market leader in lift planning software. So they have a very, very robust software. It's by A1A Software, and they have different levels of training. You can go to I think a 4-hour course. You can do a 4-day boot camp, to get people fully up to speed. There's a lot of companies, and for instance, SCNRA membership that utilize this software, as well as other organizations that need to do lift planning internally. YouTube, we didn't want to go. We could bombard this whole list if we pulled up 5 or 6 of the best YouTube channels. What we decided to show you was there's this playlist. We created this a little while ago, but it's the best cranes and rigging heavy transport YouTube videos. So I think anyone can actually go add videos to this playlist, but there's currently over 50 videos I think on this list. But there's great stuff from Mammoth and Sims Crane, Barnhardt, etc. It's kind of the best of YouTube in our eyes of what's out there for cranes and rigging. Another resource people don't know probably a lot about is this online mobile crane operator course. There's in 2017, coming right around the corner, is the OSHA requirement for crane operator certification. ITI has made it our top objective of ours to give our customers access to the resources to pass this exam, to get their people to pass this exam at the lowest cost possible. So this is an online test prep that will help them do that. And it's basically 16 hours with instructor-led training, and it's a great self-paced learning method. So another couple self-paced methods here. We've sold a ton of these DVDs on basic rigging. This is a 4-hour course as well as a 3-hour signal person course, but it's very robust for new hires, essentially people that are new into the crane and rigging space. It's a ton of video, a ton of visual action. These shots are actually video shots, I believe, in the footage. So great for entry-level people. And then this is not for entry-level people. It's a rigging engineering program. This is another self-paced program that is taught by several of the authors you actually probably seen. Here's Keith Anderson. Here's Dave Dewar, Ron Koerner, some of the top engineers in the world in what they do. Here's Jim Weethorn. But this program is ASME approved for CEUs, and it is I think there's over almost 10 courses online that are taught by these gentlemen, and ASME got behind it because it's one of a kind, and it's very, very robust in its subject matter. The last thing to close out I don't know how I did on time, Jonah, but the last thing to close out our webinar, this resource you should know about if you've been on a webinar before. This is our Showcase Webinar Series archive. So we show this at the end of every webinar to make sure you know that, hey, this webinar, if you enjoyed it, we have about 30 others like it recorded that you can just go watch. I think we've estimated there's over 60 hours of free training content. We've had companies like Bechtel, Barnhardt, Fluor, and Terex present, as well as ITI has presented over, I think, 75% of these. So great training content. You can download the PowerPoint file or PDF of it. You can watch the video, etc. So really good stuff. It's at iti.com/webinars. And after this email, or after this webinar, you'll actually get an email that'll show you how to access all this content. So what did I miss? This is to wrap us up. I know that was 25 minutes. I'm going to pause in a minute here to ask if there was any questions or stuff we want to talk about in line with Jonah. But we're going to build out, like I said, our crane rigging resources section of our website further. This was the first trial effort at finding 50 items that should be on there. I want to know from you, what did I miss? So what else do you think should be in this list on our crane rigging resources? What have you found in the industry that's helpful for you or you've heard from others? So if you go to iti.com/50, you'll have a survey that'll ask you 2 or 3 multiple choice questions to help us gain an understanding of what you have access to right now. And then there's a big text box that'll say, hey, what other items should we have covered? So iti.com/50, please go do that now, and I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions that we should address. Great. Yeah, Jonah saved my bacon here with Sampson. So the Sampson Rope, remember if I completely blundered over the HMPE acronym, but it's a high modulus polyethylene is HMP. And then somebody asked about what is Keith's designation, essentially. He had a BDES after his name. That's Keith Anderson with Bechtel. He wrote Rigging Engineering Basics, and he's the program manager for the engineering training program. So Keith was actually named Bechtel Distinguished Engineer and Scientist. There's only 50 of them in the entire company currently, of like 80,000 plus employees, I want to say. So that's what Keith's name, or after his name, that was his designation. He's not a registered professional engineer in the United States. He has a professional engineering designation from the UK, which is where he's from. But I want to show you this website, actually, since you're all still hanging with us. But Bechtel Distinguished Engineers and Scientists. So he was awarded this last year by Bechtel leadership team, basically for his work with the rigging engineering book, as well as the engineering training program. So like this says, currently there are 51 distinguished engineers and scientists who represent all of these different industries that Bechtel is in. I think Keith was actually the first person in the history of the company from the construction department, essentially. So an incredible representation of who Keith is. Question came up, what has been largely absent, or oh, sorry. Yeah, a good comment came in on the crane safety management. Well, actually, this is what was from Ron Koerner. Sorry about that. Is what has been largely absent in the industry. What Ron said is parallel literature that addresses good practice in managing crane use. So that was what we were referring to on the SCNRA's crane safety management book. So, Mr. Koerner, you probably all see a press release coming out on that book here shortly that will include that quote. So good stuff. It doesn't look like there was any other comments that have come in initially, but again, this will all be on our crane rigging resources section on our website. So, but again, you'll have access to this PowerPoint, etc. Don't forget to go to iti.com/50 to complete the survey, and I didn't even mention, but you'll get a 25% coupon basically to use at our bookstore if there's any of these resources that you found might be useful. Obviously, you can apply that promo there. But we'd really like to hear what you'd like to add or recommend that we add. And hey, I've enjoyed doing this, and I appreciate the time and If you have any other webinar ideas as well, by the way, make sure you feel free to add those to the survey. But for now, thank you very much for joining us. I was a little over time. Apologize, but I've enjoyed it. Talk to you later. Thank you.